Hello and welcome to this video about making a character for the new Aberrant system, and it's the story path system by Onyx Path. The reason I'm making this video is because I found the character creation a little convoluted, and some of that might be because the Aberrant rules that I'm using is based on it's the preview from the Kickstarter and not the final version. But some of it is also getting used to the story path system, which I haven't played before. So without further ado, I'll try to jump into it and walk you through the process. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use this character. The character is Sutek, and it was a character that I played in the first edition of Aberrant, and I had a lot of fun with him, and we played for quite a while, a few years actually, perhaps even more. And the premise or the character concept is like an Egyptologist or archaeologist who erupts in Egypt and turns into this monstrous super being. And I wrote this like his Nova files based on in the original book they had these small blurbs like this, which outlined the famous characters. And we did those for our character group as well. So here it is, and you can read it if you want to, but it's just to get the feel of the character. So when we're jumping into this, I'll just have to change it and go over to the text page. So here you can see on one hand we have the character sheet, and on the other hand we have the rules for creating a character. And these rules, you'll notice a lot of these references to page XX and stuff like that, and that's of course because it's a preview version and it's not done. And also in addition to this preview version, in order to make a character, you're going to need the core Trinity rulebook, which I'm also going to use along the way. The character sheet over here I found online, and it's fan made, so it's not the official character sheet either. But as far as I know, no official character sheet exists yet because, well, preview and all that. So, and I'm just going to type in some information here, starting with his name, and his name was David Conventon. And my name was Jens, and the concept we're going with here is the monstrous Egyptologist. And his alias, his superhero name, is Sutek, after the Egyptian god of war. So, with that in place, I'm going back and looking at the character creation summary, and I've picked my name and background, and I can choose these aspirations. I won't be doing that now. It's sort of like the character goals, because, well, I'm not going to play the character, and also I think it makes more sense in the context of you need to know which group you're playing with, and so on to probably do your aspirations, in my mind at least. But suffice to say, they're character goals, and you're supposed to pick two of those, a short-term and a long-term goal. Moving on to paths, and that's really where this system is very different from previous storyteller system, and that's you need to pick these paths, and they're not. It's sort of like class, but not really anyway. You have 3 of them. You have your origin path, which is your character's background, where does he come from. You have the role path, which is the class path. What sort of role do you play in your group and in the narrative? And then you have the society path, which is what sort of group do you belong to. I'm going to go through them one at a time, and then I'm going to fill out the character sheet with the information I get. So for this character, I actually ended up making it a bit more complicated because I found the origins, which they described in the core books, they didn't really fit. Also the core books, they really encourage you to draw up your own character path. So of course I did that, and I'm going to show you the result, and I'm going to explain how this character path is made up. So here it comes, and it's here, and he's the archaeologist, and that's his origin path. And the thing is, normally you have like a text explaining what the archaeologist is, but I skipped that and went straight for the rules stuff because I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted. I wanted like sort of the Indiana Jones-ish type of archaeologist, yeah. So I went here, and you can see the example connections, and these are really just examples. Most of the ones in the book have like 3 or 4 of them. And I went with stuff like museum curators, university professors, and foreign cultural attaches as the example connections you could have being an archaeologist. And that just sort of made sense for me, but you could really just, when you're creating a path, any example that makes sense, you could really do. And when we get to using this later, you see that these are really just examples, and I'm going to twist them a little, not much, but with some of the paths. Then for skills, you pick 4, and I went with the culture, reflecting your cultural understanding. Enigmas, which is solving riddles and puzzles and figuring out stuff using raw brain power. Humanities, which is obviously the knowledge of archaeology and history, falls under this skill, so it was pretty needed. And then I was like at an impasse because if I go back and look at the text from before, and it's just, well, you can't see it, so I'm just going to remove the origin path for a bit. You can see here the skill list, and I really had a little trouble finding out what skill should be the 4th skill, because I didn't really feel like any of them was like they weren't a straight match, whereas the other 3 were quite obvious. So I ended up choosing survival, and it was simply because I was thinking, well, as an archaeologist, at least if you're like the Indiana Jones type of archaeologist, you're going to go out in the wilderness and dig up ruins and stuff like that. So knowing a bit of basic survival would probably help you, but you could have gone with another skill. That's just the way I rolled. So and then you have to choose edges, and edges is sort of like, if you know other storyteller games, it's your backgrounds or your merits, and there are a lot of them. And this list, when you're making a path, you get to choose I think it's 15 dots worth of backgrounds for the path. Some of these you can like have 1 dot and 5 dots, but when you choose these, you always go for the maximum. So I think boom, boom, boom. I think patron goes quite high, and so you chose the cost of choosing that as an edge for the origin path is the maximum cost you could pay for that background. And I looked through the lot of them in the books, and I went with the direction sense because when you're digging around old ruins, having a sense of direction seems handy. I went with library because, of course, you could have a big library. I went with photographic memory because that's also kind of a neat trick for someone doing scholarly things. Speed reading as well. Weak spots, that's like the only combat-ish edge I have in the pack, which is like spotting spotting weak spots, and it can be in structures or in plants or in a lot of different things, and using or exploiting them. And I thought it makes sense if like you have to break through a fortified wall to get into the tomb or whatever you're digging out. The ability to spot weak spots, I think it was all right within this cinematic approach to archaeologists. And then fame and patron being the last two. I mean, making a living as an archaeologist without a wealthy patron, that's I think that could be hard. Yeah. So I used this, and I went back to the character sheet, and I wrote for my origin path up here. I said, well, I'm the archaeologist origin path, and I have it on 1 dot. And the thing is, these paths, you can increase them, and each time you do, you gain the corresponding bonuses. And you have a lot of bonuses coming in with your path. So, and what exactly are they? Well, if I go to the rule book of the Trinity Core book, then you can, and I go to the path section. Oh, it's scrolling a bit fast here. And it has this little text box, with an example. But what I really wanted to look at is, well, what do I get? I get the following elements. I get the short description of the path. Well, yeah. And then I get 4 skills associated with the path. So when I go, that's and among those 4 skills, I chose the ones for archaeologists right before. I get 3 dots to distribute for, and for me, I'm just going to do the what I think what's the base of the character is. I'm going to pick 3 dots of humanities because, in my mind, if you are like if you've gone to university or college or something like that, having a few dots that makes sense. And I'm thinking he could make a living out of being an archaeologist, and then you do need to be good at it. So, and then for the then I get to choose 2 dots of edges, and they need to come off the list I made before. And you can see that on. I'm just going to scroll down here. Yes. There. And it says you get to choose 2 dots of edges. So I'm going to do that. I just jump back to the overview because I think otherwise I'll be scrolling back and forth all the time. And I'm going to, with the direction sense, and I'm going to go with weak spots. And the reason for that is that this character, despite being an archaeologist, I want to choose stuff that are going to fit his role path as well. And there's no requirement to do that, but I thought it makes sense. So I also get to choose some connections, but I'm going to do the connections when I've chosen all my paths, because I'm going to read them on a different page of the character sheet, and I think they deserve special mention. So I'm also going to choose my role, and for role I'm going with the combat specialist, and that might seem like an odd fit, but the thing is that the theme of this guy is he walks out into the desert, gets lost, and he erupts and turns into this giant beetle man, and really all of his nova powers or supernatural powers, they are about fighting. So that's really what he does. And the combat specialists have a few skills as well, and I think I could show it off for you here. And I need to go down to here, path creation, adventure, the combat specialists, and it's over here. And with that in mind, I'm going to say that well, he needs to be able to fight, and it's sort of like the same thing really. So I'm just going to dump off the 3 dots in close combat, and it's not and it's yeah, but yeah, I'll get more dots and fill in the other ones later. And he gets 2 edges as well, and I'm going with the forceful martial arts. He's going to be an unarmed combatant most of the time, and he's learned how to fight. So, and I think that's going to become in handy for him. So for the final path, I'm going with the society path, and here I'm just going to write Project Utopia, and that's from the Aberrant book, the Aberrant preview, and it's obviously it's way down here in the text. Yep, though that was the Yen Society, it's way down here somewhere. Yeah, and it's the society path, that's sort of like which group do you belong to, and he belongs to Project Utopia, and he tries to make the world a better place. When we played this a lot of years back, we didn't really choose which part of Project Utopia we were attached to, so our group was more like freelance sort of or floating specialists, so to speak. So we helped out in different branches of Utopia. For this purpose, it says among skills, choose 4 appropriate to the division you're in. I'm just going to go with the Team Tomorrow, and it's not because he was Team Tomorrow, but it's just, yeah, we were floating around the organization, and so that's just the choice I'm going with. And I have to pick 3 dots again from among that list. And I'm thinking he does have a bit of integrity, so I'm going to pick 2 of that. And also, he also, yeah, I think close combat was like one of them, or boom. Yeah, it is. But I'm going to need some athletics, because he's going to be jumping around and doing stuff. So he's going to be athletic as well. So, yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm going with. So just now I just need to dot off the final dot, and you start with 1 dot in each. And his edges, I'm going to go with wealth, because, well, all know us earn a lot of cash, and Project Utopia pays well as well. So now we're actually quite far down the path of character creation, and we've reached the attributes distribution. And the way this works is that I'm I get to each of these categories, I get to prioritize within them. And his primary path, because he's going to be a strong and very resilient superhero, is going to be the center one, and I'm going to give him a couple of dots in might, one in dexterity, and the rest I'm just going to throw into actually I'm going to go with 5 dots in stamina. The concept of this guy is he's a survivor and he's going to survive everything. He has his primary superpower, when we get to it, is going to be regeneration, and that goes well with the stamina. Yeah, well, I'm just I'm changing my mind back and forth here. Well, yeah, I'm going to go with that. That's fine. Then the secondary is going to be his his mental capabilities, and I'm just going to place 1 dot all the way down, and he has 4 dots here, so I'm going to go do like that. And the reason I'm giving him 3 dots in cunning is because cunning also represents your senses, and I also want him to be able to track stuff, and yeah. And then for the final one, I have 2 dots, and that's not a lot, but I'm going to give him 1 in presence, and I'm going to give him 1 in composure. Now, having done that, I get to choose a favorite category of action, and I'm going to go with force. I really considered going with resilience, because that also fits the character concept a lot. But it's like the thing this does is it's basically gives you 1 dot all the way across the board in that category. And when I looked at the combinations of attributes, intellect, might, and presence were all fitting, whereas down here I was more like I really didn't imagine him having a high composure. High stamina, sure, resolve that might be as well, but the composure was sort of an issue. But yeah, of course I could have distributed these in another way and gone with resilience, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to go with force. And as far as I can tell, choosing your favorite approach, as it just gives you a single dot of attributes, and really it could have been placed either way. Yeah, so it's mostly fluff in that sense, because it simply it alters the minimum amount of dots you need to have in that category. But yeah, well, that was the attributes, and then we're going to reach the more exciting part, which is applying my Nova template. And the Nova template it's quite huge actually, because that's where all the good stuff is for Aberrants and Novas, and I get because I'm a Nova, I get a dot of quantum. I also get 1 free dot of fame or alternate identity, but I don't really imagine him having an alternate identity, so I just give him a dot of fame. He's quite well known, primarily for his actions in Japan. If you go back and read the last section, the Nova file I displayed in the beginning, then you can see his he did have some combat experience in Japan. I then get 1 dot more of a favorite attribute in one of these 3, and I'm just going to give him a dot more of might. He is really, really strong, and he's going to be pushing around his might a lot. And then we reach the part about giving him really Nova powers using experience points. And for the purpose of this video, I made a little XP track, and now some of you might notice that in this text under Nova template it says 150. I'm going to go with 250 XP because I'm not creating him as a starter character. I'm creating him like midway through our campaign, where he had a bit of experience, and he was like more fleshed out, and doing so will allow me to give him some more powers and stronger powers, especially. So yeah, and the thing is, when you reach this point, you're like, well, where am I going to go from here? Because you simply get this list down here, and you can buy a lot of different things from experience points, and yeah. I really looked at this for a long time, and then I went and checked out the powers, and I had a really good idea of what I wanted to do, but I had very little idea of if it was feasible with the amount of XP I selected. So, and I'm just going to write down some of the powers I went with, and then I'm going to explain to you my choices. I'm not going to go through all the powers. I think for that you need to buy the book or something, but yeah. And the thing is, because I started as an experienced Nova, I need to buy up my role path. That's the first thing I need to do. So I'm going to give him a second dot of combat specialist, and that costs me some XP. And looking at the table, I can see it costs 18 experience points to do that. So I'm spending 18 experience. And what does that give me? Well, it gives me another 3 dots in the combat specialist skill set. So I'm going to give him another 2 dots of close combat, and I'm also going to give him a dot of athletics. And now, looking at it, I realize I forgot something, because in addition to the dots, skill dots you get from your paths, you do have like a few floating skill dots. You have gained 6 of those, and I place these, or I'm going to place these I'm going to give him one in culture, one in empathy, one in enigmas, and a few in survival, because, well, I think he learned from his mistake by wandering out into the desert. Yeah, that was 5, and then I'm going to give him a dot more in athletics. So, and yeah, and also I think now would be a good time to look at the path connections that you get from choosing these dots in your path. So I'm going to go down to the place where it says path connections, and the thing is, for each dot, for each path, you get like a society connection. And for the archaeologist, I'm going to go with the fact that he knows a gentleman, or he's a member of a gentleman's club for archaeologists. For the combat specialist background, I'm going with the aside from doing the gentleman clubs, he's also a member of a Nova Fight Club. He likes to fight, and he likes his newfound powers and trying them out. So yeah. And for Project Utopia, I'm going to go with something sort of combining his archaeology with Utopia. So I'm saying he knows or has relations with a task force in Utopia, working on preserving historical sites. And now, in addition to this, you get like a personal contact for each path. And if you have more than one dot, like I have in Combat Specialist, I can either choose an additional contact, or I can make the contact I've chosen more broad in scope. And I'm not going to go into details about this, but for this I'm just going to pick 3 contacts in order to show you how it works. So for the archaeologist, I'm going to go with Philip, and I'm going to write he's a curator of the British Museum. Yeah, and then for the Fight Club, I'm going to go with Callum, and Callum, he's a martial arts instructor at the London Reshoot Center. And the Reshoot Center, that's like where Project Utopia, they have these centers where they train the Novas. And that's where he met Callum, who taught him what he knows about martial arts. And then finally, because of his experience in Japan, I'm going to give him Hiroi, and she's like the leader of something called research oversight. Not the entire thing, but at least she's the leader of the Japan branch, and he got to know her during his operations in Japan. So, and that's his connections. And for these, I thought a lot about, well, how powerful can the characters I'm choosing as a connection be? And really these preview rules, they don't really give you, nor do the Trinity Core rules give you any sort of power scope. But the thing is that mostly these connections, they give a bonus to one of your dice rolls, and the bonus sort of depends on your number of dots in your path. So even if you choose someone really well connected, the bonus you get, it's going to be the same. It's a bonus to one of your dice rolls when you're doing something where their support could somehow be relevant. And the bonus is determined by your path, not by if I'm going with the President of the United States, well, if I have one dot in a path, he's going to give me the same bonus as someone else. Of course, narratively, he would probably be able to justify that bonus in a lot of more cases. But I don't know if that's an issue, but yeah, you should be aware of it as a storyteller in this sort of game. Now, I also need to choose some skill tricks, and for every skill you have at least 3 dots in, you get a skill trick. I'm just going to write them down on the origin story because I couldn't really find anywhere else to write it on the sheet. So yeah. And I'm going to go with no barrier, and that's for my athletics. That means that he gets an easier time going over difficult terrain and stuff like that. For his combat, close combat skill, I'm going to go with fast planning. Yeah, which, as it says, it's about improvising and doing stuff a bit more fast. And I won't go into details with every rules aspect, because then this video, it's already long and it's going to take a long time to get done. And the final thing, I'm going to go with everything in context. And the thing that allows me to do is it allows me to, when I'm faced with an enigma where my knowledge of humanities could help in some way or manner, I get to add my humanities dots to the dice pool, and that's a really cool thing, and it's sort of like a flexible thing. And then finally I also get specializations. There's a lot of things in this game, and that I think when you start playing, I'm not thinking it's going to be all that bad, but creating the character, that was really a lot of things you needed to take into consideration. And again, you get one for each skill you have more than 3 dots in. And for athletics, I'm going to go with climbing. He's a really good climber. For his combat ability, I'm going to go with claws, and I think it's always a bit boring when you go with your chosen weapon, especially if, like claws, you can't be disarmed really unless someone cuts off your hands. But on the other hand, the system is like, it's balanced around you being able to choose like a favorite weapon and stuff like that. So I would feel like I would be nerfing him if I chose another specialization for this, but you could go with something else, and I think a storyteller would be perfectly justified in saying choosing a weapon that you're going to have 90% of the time, or in the case of claws 99.99% of the time. Well, that's just not that's just simply too broad, and I would fully I could fully understand that. And for the last which is my humanities, I'm going to go with archaeology. So yeah, that gets us back to doing the Nova stuff, which I've been looking forward to. Oh, and I forgot the combat specialist, the additional dot here. That gives me 2 dots of edges as well. And for that, I am going to go with the armor expert. And he's not really going to be wearing like a physical armor, but he's going to have armored scales. And as far as I can tell, the armor expert will work with that as well. It basically improves his armor a bit, and I really see no reason why it shouldn't. But again, a harsh GM or harsh storyteller might say, well, it only works with artificial armor that you put on. But again, why would you want to nerf a Nova compared to everyone else? I don't know. It would effectively make that edge useless for most Nova concepts, or at least those who use supernatural armor. And the final one, I'm going to go with hair trigger reflexes, and it simply gives him a bit more initiative, makes him faster in combat. But it's fine. Yeah. Then where to go from here? Well, the thing is that there are a lot of powers, and you need to have like at least an idea of what do you want to do with your concept. And I went with looking at his core abilities, and his core abilities for me was regeneration and sort of an adaptability, but he also has claws and he has scales and stuff like that, and that gives me a framework on which to work. So I'm going to go and look at the quantum powers and mega edges, and for some yeah, and going through these in the book, there are, as I said, there are a lot of them, but you could I think there's some approaches that are better suited than others, and especially the mega edges chapter starts with something called mega attributes. And if you're familiar with the first edition, mega attributes were, I mean, all your power all your power were at the mega attributes. You needed them, and they made all of your other abilities vastly more powerful. So they would like the foundation on which you're building your concept. Well, in this version, not so much. The thing is, when you're playing in this system, scale is what matters, or it matters a lot. Scale is like your relative power compared to someone else. And I mean, all humans would usually be scale 1, and you would have a scale 1 human, and he would have 5 intellect, and he would be really good at playing chess. That might be resolved, but anyways, he's good at it, and really good, like world championship good. And then he would run into a Nova who is scale 2, well, who might be scale 2, and he would lose every time, in a normal situation at least, because, or on average, he would lose because of the difference in scale. Scale simply makes you that much. You surpass the scale of normal humans, and I think they have an example of running, and they say humans are like scale 1, whereas a race car might be scale 3, or something like that. So attempting to chase down a race car, or flee from a race car on your legs, you're not going to succeed, and that's the point of scale. You're on a different level, yeah, this was like I digressed, but anyways, mega attributes usually give you scale, but it's not like they don't give you scale on everything. So even though I might have Mega Might doesn't give me scale on every dice roll that Might applies to. It actually outlines, well, it gives you scale when you're doing feats of strength, lifting, and so on and so on. It gives you scale for the purpose of damaging an opponent. But you could conceivably get in situations where you do not actually gain a scale bonus against someone, even though you're rolling your might or your intellect or your whatever. So the scale of scale, or the scope of your mega attributes are not as widely applicable as they were back in the first edition, and specifically because they've worded on what sort of actions you gain scale. Most of the time you will not be able to use that scale combined with your other supernatural powers, and specifically if those supernatural powers grant you scale, you will always simply use the larger of the two. They will not stack. So in effect, mega attributes are no longer the place to start, for me at least. I wanted to start with looking at the mega edges. The reason I do that is this character does not have any quantum powers, he doesn't have laser coming out his eyes, or he's not capable of turning turning stuff into gold or something equally dramatic. That's not the thing he does. He's more of a low-key Nova. So I'm going to go with mega edges, and of these mega edges, the most defining for me when I created him were regeneration. When he's damaged, he can heal himself. The thing is, getting regeneration requires him to have his I'm just going to write it on advantages because, yeah, then it's on the same page. That's easier for you. He needs, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write them down here under quantum powers because I need dots. That he needs to have mega stamina or mega resolve, but I'm going to go with mega stamina as well. And he needs 1 dot of that in order to buy regeneration. Each of these dots costs him 12 XP. So going back to the original sheet, I'm just going to add another 2 times 12 XP, and we almost just spent 50 XP just buying those 2 things. Yeah, they do. You spend your XP fast in this game, so yeah. What else? Well, the other thing I think he needed was he needed what was called body modification, or what is called body modification in this body modification, and specifically he needs claws, and he needs to have adhesive grip, like you know, like Spider-Man, so he can climb on walls and stuff like that. And that's 2 dots. Body modification has no other requirement, but that's still another 24 XP he's just spent. And then another defining trait for him, let's say, in my mind, was he had adaptation. And adaptation is also a 1 dot, but and the thing is, adaptation simply makes it so that you can survive in any environment. You could survive in the dark, empty recesses of space and stuff like that, and you wouldn't die. And that's sort of his thing. But in order to have adaptation, he needs another 2 dots of mega stamina, so I buy that as well. And that's like 36 XP, so we're going to reach that. And to make matters worse, in order to buy 3 dots of mega stamina, he needs a quantum rating of 3, so I need to buy 2 dots of quantum as well, and doing that costs me 32 XP, so I'm going to jot that down as well. So now we're getting close, but we still have have time to buy some more fitting stuff for him. So because I want to go with the Predator style, he's also going to have Mega Scent, and I also want the Mega Vision. Mega Vision allows him to see like heat and stuff like that, Predator style, and Mega Scent allows him to track by smell. And they cost 12 XP for each dot, so again. And in order to buy these, there's another requirement. He needs Mega Cunning, so I'm going to write Mega Cunning, and a single dot will do, but still, that's a single dot, costs 12 XP. Yeah, well, what's left? I want him to be scary, I really do, so I buy Dreadful Presence. He is scary to be around, and in order to buy Dreadful Presence, he also needs a dot of Mega Presence. Yeah, like that. And well, I think that should be it, right? 12 points for each dot. And then finally, at least here, I'm going to give him some durability. durability is like an edge, giving him increased armor. And I'm going to give him 2 dots of that, because that will give him a scale of 2. Meaning he is able to stand up against things that are, when receiving damage, that are made for blowing stuff up that is bigger than normal humans. It could be, I don't know if a rocket launcher is perhaps a bit harsh, but I think like heavy machine guns fire and stuff like that. He could potentially survive that or be unarmed or unhurt by receiving that sort of fire. The thing is, here I really ran into, I wanted to understand what does durability actually means in terms of survivability. And I looked into the rules, and some of it was clear, like it gives you scale, it gives you a bit of armor, but also it gave you something called armor rating. And I looked through the both the Trinity core book and the preview, and nowhere could I find an explanation as to what armor rating was. And I tried Googling, and apparently I was not the only one who couldn't find that explanation, because, well, it doesn't exist. I found 2 different interpretations on armor rating, and one was that it added to your soft armor, which would mean that your soft armor, normally you could have like 2 dots of soft armor. If your armor rating adds to that, well, then your novas are going to have they're going to be very hard to harm, extremely hard to harm. And I don't know if the system can handle that, so to speak. I think there's probably a reason why they capped it at 2 dots. And the other approach I found was that someone said, well, the core rules, when you make an armor, you get to add additional tags based on your wealth. And perhaps the rating is simply additional tags to the armor, which means you can assign it different properties. And I think I would probably be going with that for play, at least until the final version hits the streets. And I think I also found a comment by some of the writers saying that they were rethinking durability. So I'm not. I think it's going to look different when the final rules comes around. But until then, I think you could simply do it as tags that improves your body armor. So let's see. I have my regeneration. I have my body modification, adaptation, mega scent, mega vision, dreadful presence, durability. And then I'm actually pretty much done with most of his supernatural powers. The thing is, I also think he needs some mega might, because I want him to be stronger than, I want him to be able to lift a car and stuff like that. So I think a dot of mega might will probably be enough for that. And then I have 20 XP left. I hope I calculated this correctly. Yeah, I did. Now, the way he worked when I played with him was that he had this monstrous form, and then he had his normal form, sort of like Hulk, going in between these two. And the best way of doing that in this game is by taking the edge known as dormancy. And the thing is, dormancy allows you to conceal being a nova. And the first 3 dots, they are like discrete dormancy. You won't change your appearance. You won't change, but you will turn down your mega presence and stuff like that, so people won't notice that you're obviously supernatural. At the 4th dot, you get the ability to have a different shape, but some core things will be the same, like your hair color, your fingerprints and stuff like that. And at the 5th dot, you are allowed to have an entirely different shape, and I'm going to go with that because I don't want him I don't want his monstrous shape to have like fingerprints like his human form and stuff like that. So with 5 dots of dormancy, and that's going to cost me 20 XP, no, 15 XP. He actually has the ability to change forms. He can either be in his Nova form, or he can change into or he can change into his human form. And then I have 5 XP left, and I'm going to do something a little boring, but I'm going to spend them on a skill dot. And I'm going to buy him 1 dot of command, again based on his experiences in Japan. He picked up a little ability to order troops around and stuff like that. And I think that reflects his character pretty well. So I think I've actually gone through most of the basic character creation now, and I'm sort of happy with the concept, and I actually enjoyed the process as well. But it is more time consuming, and there are like more pieces you need to fit together than in most storyteller games. Even games like Exalted, which are really rules heavy, are in my opinion, it's easier to make a character in that. But I think that when it comes down to playing, I think this will play more fluently than Exalted does, simply because, well, you do have a lot of powers, but you don't have like thousands of charms you need to memorize as the storyteller in order to get the game running. And I didn't really go. I didn't go into quantum powers a whole lot. If you buy quantum powers, it gets a bit more complicated, because you have like modifiers you can buy for your powers and stuff like that. And doing so allows you to customize the powers, and I think that's really cool. And I think if I had designed a character with quantum powers, well, then I would have spent some time customizing these in a way that I thought makes sense for my character. And you can totally do that, and in a lot of ways, if you enjoy, crunch or tinkering, then I think you're going to enjoy doing this character setup. I don't know if it has like obvious exploity combinations and stuff like that, but there probably are some. You can't design a system this complex and not have loopholes and stuff that can break the system. I think that's pretty impossible. But I also think that places the responsibility on a storyteller to look at his players and say, well, why are you playing this game? Is it just to get the most overpowered character you can create, or are you here to tell a story? And I think hopefully most players are there doing the latter. At least that's what I'm hoping for the campaign I'm going to be a player in shortly. But yeah, without further ado, that was like an hour worth of video, and if you made it this far, I'm really impressed. So thanks for tuning in, and I'm going to be stopping here.